I'll start a recording and I will start.
Started.
Oh. A very warm welcome to all. I'm Aarti Gadre, member of WDC KES Shroff College of Arts and Commerce. It's my privilege to extend my warm welcome to all the participants over here. And I should say, Happy Women's Day to all. International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for acceleration of gender parity. Significant activity is witnessed worldwide as a group to come together to celebrate women's achievement or rally for women's equality. This year's theme is Break the Bias. Imagine a gender equal world, a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. Together, we can forge women's equality. And collectively, we can say #break the bias. So with this theme, I will like to start today's webinar on #break the bias. Now I'll request Ms. Mary Pillai, chairperson of WTC and our junior college, to introduce our today's guest, Ms. Saundari Mukherjee. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Aarti. A very good morning to each and every one of you, and a blessed Women's Day to all the bold, beautiful, and empowered women who have logged in for this wonderful program. Let me take the honor and privilege to introduce our guest speaker for this auspicious occasion of the International Women's Day celebration, Ms. Saundari Mukherjee. Ms. Saundari Mukherjee is a Bachelor in Commerce, a qualified cost and works accountant, and has a postgraduate diploma management degree from one of the most prestigious management institution of India, IIM Calcutta. She is an organizational consultant and a business storytelling coach. She helps leaders and teams to use the organic power of stories in a business context to bring humanity to the workplace. She has over 25 years experience in the area of finance, operations, banking, and entrepreneurship with Unilever, ANZ, a firm TESOL in Hong Kong, Middle East, and India. Ms. Saundari has an insider's view on the challenges that organizations and teams face, and this drives her passion while working on consulting and capability building projects. She is known for cultivating and maintaining mutually beneficial business alliance by deepening client engagement. She is a visiting faculty at Palsha University and IIM Kozhikode. She was the honorary speaker at the School of Business, UPES Dehradun, the MS PhD Communication project, IIT Bombay, AIMA, etc. She is passionate about working with startup ecosystem and has organized programs to help women explore opportunities during the course of transition across locations and careers. In volumes, we can speak about Ms. Saundari Mukherjee's credentials, but time limitation is forcing me to cut short. We, the WDEC of the Degree College and the Junior College, present before you the renowned speaker, Ms. Saundari Mukherjee. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Professor Pillai. I'm humbled and honored. Thank you, Aarti, and thank you, Vaishali, KES, and everybody who's made this forum possible. I'm a mentor with Aspire for Her. As you know, Aspire for Her is a startup which is powered by our mission to help women join and stay in the workforce. We also have a rich network of women leaders who guide and mentor the members in their career paths. So be it whether you're passionate about technology, business, journalism, coding, acting, baking, we have mentors who are working in all these spheres of life. So I urge all of you to join the platform, and I'm just going to post the link on the chat for your sign up before I start off. When I was thinking of this talk today, especially on Women's Day, and I do think every day is Women's Day or every day is Men's Day, so we want to celebrate it every day, all our achievements and what we all do together. One of the things that comes to my mind is always a song called 4 Minutes. This was a collaboration between Madonna and Justin Timberlake. It was released in 2008. And Madonna, as they were preparing for that song album, she was not happy with the lyrics. She said it was not power packed enough, it was not punchy enough. She wanted to keep changing. And Justin turned to her and told her, "No, you can't change the world in 4 minutes." So while like that, breaking the bias is not something that we will manage in the 30 odd minutes today, congratulations to each and every one of you for taking that first step together. And I hope to be in this journey with you. With that, I'd just like to share my slide deck. Not that we need a slide deck for this topic generally, but I want to highlight some of the points, especially when we are online. I think it's always nice to have some visual anchors while we are talking about it. I hope you're able to see the slides. So we talk about first impressions, and though we are on Zoom today, if your videos are on, I'd like you to take just 30 seconds looking at the person to the left or right of you, whichever way the screen is, and observe that person. Just take 30 seconds and do that. So how was that experience of looking at somebody? Maybe it's somebody that you already know. So how was that experience? And if, a couple of you can unmute and share, that'll be great. And I can get started quickly. So I have Professor Mary Pillai on the screen. I can see a blackboard behind her. I know that she's a professor, but I know then the blackboard also shows me that, she's teaching and she's committed and she's sitting in the classroom. I did see at the beginning that she had her notes with her. So obviously somebody who believes in preparation. So this is something that I'm making out. Any one person, can you share about the person that you can see on your left or right of the screen?
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, please, Tanvi.
So as I can see, Aarti ma'am, I guess she's in the college and she's doing her session from there.
And when you see that, what is the one thing that's coming to your mind, Tanvi, about Aarti ma'am?
As in being eager to participate in events, and even after having so much to do, she's doing the session.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tanvi. And so it just takes, this is somebody maybe, so obviously you already have some impression, but it takes only 30 seconds looking at somebody on the screen or live, we form impressions about them. And has it also been a situation that sometimes, and I'm sure this has happened during your college from day one when you met a lot of people to now, somebody that you met and made an impression, and then you got to know the person better and you changed your opinion about that person? Happens, right? Happens all the time. So why do we really care about these first impressions and why are they so important for us? And let me share a quick anecdote on this. So we know that the gender ratio in the Indian judiciary system has been really skewed. There are very few female judges in Indian courts. This is Justice Rekha Palli, who is a judge in the Delhi High Court. And during a hearing of a case, she was constantly being referred to as sir. And this led to an interesting exchange, and she actually turned around and said, I object. I'm not a sir, and I hope you can make that out. So the lawyer who was doing this apologized and says, sorry, but it is because of the chair that you're sitting in. Hearing this, the judge came up with a retort and said, the excuse as such just got worse. Because if you say that the chair is meant only for sirs and not for women. So how, if as young members, we don't stop differentiating, then what hope do we have for the future? This is what Justice Rekha Palli had to say. And we do need to ask ourselves, are we constantly judging a book by the cover? I know we have a very evolved audience here, and the whole idea of this session is to understand a little bit about unconscious bias, explore why we should care, look at some examples of people who have broken the bias, and also leave you with some tools and techniques to deal with it. And I know it's about 30 minutes, or I'm going to try and keep it really quick and going. So why is it so important, and what is unconscious bias? So basically, we've had these things happening in our mind thousands and hundreds of thousands of years ago, from the caveman days, and it was a useful survival technique. So as a caveman, you would look at a stick and you'll think, maybe it's a snake, maybe I should avoid. And these practices slowly started becoming shortcuts that we have in our mind to make quick decisions. And in those days, of course, it was a question of life or death. Because if you thought, oh, who's this black, long, furry creature standing on the hind legs and it's got long claws? And you say, oh, it's a bear, I need to run. This is a kind of thing, response mechanism that started getting built. And this became extremely functional for the brain. So our brain quickly started becoming very good at filtering some of this information. So we know how to react, and we know how to react very quickly. And that is why we say that if it is unconscious, that is a bias that we carry, and it's not something that we consciously do. Because how many decisions do we make on a day-to-day basis? 5, 10, 15? Chances are that you can't even put an exact number to it. That's because we make countless decisions without even realizing. Even as you're sitting here right now, listening, you're making decisions. You're making decisions, you're forming opinions about me, about the content, the questions, the talk. And all this is what is referred to as unconscious bias. This term was formed by social psychologist Mahzarin Banerjee and Tony Greenwald in 1995. So these are mental shortcuts which have helped us make decisions very quickly. The problem is sometimes these decisions are based on flawed logic or data. And let me give you an example about it. So there was a research done about orchestras. As the women's movement was gaining momentum, people wanted to actively recruit more women in the orchestra. And they started having blind auditions. Most of you would have heard of what is a blind audition. That's when people don't see who's behind the curtain. And you might have seen some shows with it also now. So people would be hiding behind the curtain and doing the performance, and they found that they were still getting more men in the orchestra. So they said, that's weird. What is going on? Are men actually better musicians? And then somebody got an idea that we must get them to take their shoes off. And as it turned out that though the curtain was pulled, the sound of the women's heels as they walked out on stage was giving some unconscious bias kicking in. And she somehow didn't then sound as good as a male musician. Once the shoes were removed, the selection was almost 50-50 every time. So now orchestras for their auditions have a carpet behind the curtain as well. So the conclusion is that if you can't see or hear women, then we are equal. And this is happening still everywhere in various unconscious ways. We receive more than 11 million bits of information every minute. And probably that number has only gone up now during COVID times. But we are consciously able to process only 40 bits, which means 99.999996% is unconscious. And we see this, right? All of you must have seen the movie Titanic, which had Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. Who is the villain in that movie? Any guesses? Anybody quickly unmute and...
The iceberg.
The iceberg, exactly. The iceberg was the villain. And that is the 1/9 that you see and the 8/9 that you don't. And that's how it is for our unconscious mind as well. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we are not even aware. And one of the prominent places where bias plays out is in our workplace, whatever the workplace is, be it a college, be it an organization. And the strongest bias in the workplace is the gender bias. And this has been quite often time and again shared. I'm going to just stop here with these initial remarks now and actually ask you to do a temperature check on the room. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word gender bias? So if you can just share on the chat, what's the first word that comes to your mind when you hear gender bias, unconscious bias? What are some of the words that come to your mind? If you can just quickly type in the chat. Any words that come to your mind?
The chat is open. I think they are afraid that whether the chat is open or not. So it is, yes.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of direct chats. So let me try to read them. Inequality, lesser opportunities, salary gap.
I also got some direct messages. Just a minute. I just removed that thing.
Feminism, inequality, sexism, gender inequality. Absolutely. All these words and more, right? Job stereotypes, excellent, nepotism. We already have such a strong word association for the word feminism. When we hear unconscious bias, we have such a strong series of words that we associate. Thanks so much for sharing. I also, women are second, unconscious bias affecting learnings and experience, discrimination, absolutely everything, all of the above. I also want to ask you some quick poll questions, and I'm going to request Vaishali to help me with the polls. So we'll have a series of 5 questions coming. You'll have 30 seconds to answer. So it's a really quick pick. I don't want to waste too much time on this. And I want you to take what first comes to your mind. The first thought that comes to your mind. No, I don't want you to process it. Is that okay? Okay, so let's...
just a second.
Yeah. So while Vaishali launches the poll, these are basically a series of 5 questions which will come up on your screen. And all you need to do is to pick the first answer that comes to your mind. And we are just trying to see what is that, and then we'll share the results of the poll. Okay, Vaishali, let's go.
Go ahead.
So who first won the Nobel Prize twice in 2 distinct scientific fields?
Can you see the poll? Just show me the thumbs up.
Let's just keep it on for 30 seconds, Vaishali. You just keep launching the next polls. And then we'll release all the results together. Okay, can we have the next one? Who invented the chainsaw? I hope most of you are able to answer. I'm sorry, my apologies if we might be missing some people as we are going fast, given in the interest of time. So I hope you're still able to see and answer the questions. Okay, can we have the next one, Vaishali? Who commercialized the face powder? And I have to thank Lady Sylvia Grace, who came up with this idea for this quiz. So I've used it from her. So thanks to Sylvia Grace, whoever that is. Okay, can we have the next one? Who invented the car heater? Just your top of the mind answer. There's like, this is just, we are doing a temperature check on the room, so it's fine. And we are in a safe space. It's all friends there together, so it's okay. It's not a quiz that's going to get graded. Can we have the next one? The last poll question. Who developed the formulation for the mascara? Mascara, in case you don't know, is the kind of thing that you put on the eyelashes. I'm just saying. I didn't know that when I was a school kid. I found out much later. So, and I'm sure these days everybody knows, but just saying. I don't want to be the one making bias in my assumption that everybody will know this. Okay, can we launch all the results, Vaishali? Can we end this poll? Yeah. Okay, the fifth poll, most of them said women created the formulation, but it's actually a man who created the formulation for mascara. Let's look at poll 4. Poll 4, who invented the car heater? 63% said a man. It was actually a woman who invented the car heater. Poll 3, who commercialized the face powder? Again, it was a man who commercialized the face powder. And we had a big skew towards the women in this. Poll 2, chainsaw, almost 50-50. It could have been anybody killing another person, but it was actually a woman who invented the chainsaw. Obviously, women were maybe feeling more frustrated about this. And poll 1, Nobel Prize twice. Well, 66% said women, and it was right. It was a woman, Marie Curie, who got it. So excellent. Thank you so much for indulging me and joining. And as we can see, we have our own biases when we do top of the mind answers about some products, what we associate, who might have been doing it. And in fact, I was just on a session organized by the IIT Bombay and Entrepreneurship Cell. And one of the ladies was talking, a lady called Saroja Elam Ali. She's founded this site called Melora. And she said when she started out, and it's an e-commerce site for exquisite jewelry. And when she started out, she said there were not a single women who were jewelry designers. So traditionally, we think, that's our forte. We wear a lot more jewelry. So we thought we would be, but there was not a single woman designer when she started out. So it was quite, some of these things are pretty interesting when we look at from the bias point of view. So I'm going to go back to sharing screen. As you can see, we carry some of these biases with us. And like I said, the most prominent area where it plays out is our workplace. Most of us believe that we are ethical, we are unbiased. We believe we are good decision makers. We think we will take a rational conclusion, but we awfully fall short because our own self-perception is very inflated. And I'll give you a very good example of something, and this happens unconsciously and we just stumble upon it. Google actually supplied an excellent example of how even a simple bias can affect your business. So when YouTube was launched, the video upload feature they launched for their app, they found that 5 to 10% of the videos were uploaded upside down. And the Google developers were baffled. They said, could a large number of users be shooting their videos incorrectly? And remember, they use the word incorrectly. That's because Google engineers had inadvertently designed the app for right-handed users. They never thought that the phone could be turned 180 degrees the other way when a user uses a left hand to do the recording. But with the help of unconscious bias, they created an app which was great for right-handed users and never addressed the possibility that a user could be left-handed. So clearly Google also needed much more diversity in their team. So as a left-hander, I realized that every time I'm doing things the other way around, when people are opening doors this way, I'll be opening the other way. So this is some feature which just unconsciously creeps in. You don't even think about it. So in reality, our biases affect our decision-making processes, our perceptions, our attitudes, our behavior, our attention, our listening skills. All this causes micro-affirmations about being unconscious bias creeping into our work. So the best first step is to make the unconscious conscious. And we can do it in a lot of different ways. I just want to share a few examples of where it comes out and why is it important to avoid bias. Because every time you avoid bias and you get a team which is more balanced, they intend to stay with the organization 1.95 times more. And we are hearing a lot about the great resignation, people leaving work now, right? So retention of staff becomes a very important point, and having a place which is more conscious of where the unconscious bias is helps you build in that kind of retention. And how does this show up? And we need to look at a few examples of how it shows up, in terms of, and there are various categories of biases. I'm not going to go into the categories today. Lot of the time it comes up like this. Oh, I don't like the way they dress, so they must be different. I don't think, I'd rather that person reminds me of myself when I was at that age. So let me employ that person. She's just back from maternity, so I can't ask her to get involved in a new project. So in various different ways, in hiring, in all our thought processes, biases just creep in. And sometimes it creeps in a very, very different way as a micro inequity. What is a micro inequity now? It is basically some of these, it's a big word for small actions. Sometimes we say, oh, they're not from Premier College. Maybe we won't employ them. Oh, they are a beginner. They don't have too much experience. So we need somebody with a lot of experience. So that's a bias. Why do we put all these assumptions constantly in our mind? And we also add this to converting it into what is called microaggression. These are things which are not spoken. They are tiny actions. Sometimes you won't even notice. So one of the things that happens sometimes is somebody will not sit in the bus next to you. They'll purpose, even if there's a vacant seat, they'll avoid it and go. So that is a microaggression sometimes. Sometimes, as a female, this happened recently in one of the groups, entrepreneur groups that I am in. This lady who's a CEO had sent a message to try to fix for a meeting, and there was her male colleague who was also marked in the mail, and the person at the other end replied on the mail assuming that the male colleague is the CEO. And they said, oh, we will fix a meeting when he is free. And she was the one asking for the meeting. So these things turn up and show up in very, very different ways. And these are not some things that we can really predict how it's going to go. And this is how unconscious it is. So there's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by this author called Daniel Kahneman. And he coined this word called YCRT, WYSAIATI, which basically opens out to what you see is all there is. So when you have incomplete information, people tend to fill in the gaps and they create their own conclusions. And that's why we often assume the worst and succumb to biases. So what we need to realize is that everybody has biases. All experience some bias at some time or the other, but biases can be positive as well. Sometimes it can be positive. If it makes a person feel respected, it's great. If it makes a person feel disrespected, it's negative. So bias has can be positive and negative. Sometimes we tend to think of bias as only negative. It can be positive as well. And bias also has a significant impact on business. You tend to excessively focus on some one person, or that person's capability is not focused on, and we say, this is what it is. So with this as the background, I want to say, okay, we all know there is bias. We all know it's unconscious. We can't go beyond it, beyond a point. How do we deal with it now? Because we need to move to that part. And we normally look at a three-pronged strategy, looking at awareness, assessment, and action. And before I go, these are some of the biases, stereotyping that you see in advertisements as well. Normally, men are portrayed as criminals. We think only women are biased against. Men are also portrayed as criminals normally. Then you have school shoes being advertised where it is Dolly Babe for the girls and Leader Game for the boys' shoes. So these things are the socializations, the stereotypes which are constantly working with us, which prevent us from looking at all this in a very different way. So to just move on, this is the three-pronged action that I want to look at. How do you create awareness? How do you look at assessments? And how do you move beyond that to action? So one very popular tool to create awareness is a tool called ladder of inference. Now this was put together by psychologist Chris Argyris and used by Peter Senge in his book, The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of a Learning Organization. And the way it works is, starting at the bottom of the ladder, you have your observable facts, the real stuff that's happening. Based on this, you selectively build your beliefs. And based on your prior experience, you interpret what they mean. Then you apply your own existing assumptions, sometimes without even thinking about them. Based on that, you draw conclusions, and those become your beliefs, and those lead to action. So if you actually see, as you go up the ladder, the reality gets removed quite far away. We take actions that seem right based on what we believe. And this creates a vicious cycle. Our beliefs have a bigger effect than on reality. We keep moving farther and farther away from the truth. We miss a few steps. We miss it in our reasoning process. And let me give a quick example. So let's say you're moving to a new office. You're all busy trying to settle down in that new place. Everybody's organizing their workstations. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of stress. There's one of the ladies, let's call her Susan, who's a new member. She's sitting at her desk on her phone and she's talking on the phone. She's laughing while the boxes are being sorted out. Somebody's arranging the furniture. She's sitting and laughing. We will look at this scene and we will immediately say, Susan is on the phone because she's making a personal call. Then we'll also start thinking, oh, Susan thinks she's better than anybody else. That's why she's not doing this work. She thinks this work is below her dignity. And then we will draw a conclusion based on it, saying Susan is not a team player. And this whole process actually takes a split second. It doesn't take a long time. We just make these quick assumptions. We make these stories about people, and we judge situations and people, and we filter out all our past experience. So our frontal brain makes that instant decision and it starts having an impact. So we need to be very conscious and aware of how it is working. And one of the ways to create awareness is to do some assessments. So the same Professor Mazarine Banerjee, she created a way to create an assessment. She created a thing called Project Implicit. It's available online. All of you can go and take it. It has a lot of categories and subcategories. Some of it may be cultural context, but it's called the implicit association test. That measures the attitudes and the beliefs that people may be unwilling or unable to report. And this is very, very interesting. Harvard did an experiment around it where they changed the image of a man using computer simulation. And they had the eyes moved further apart and then closer. Overwhelming 99% said when the eyes of the man was further apart, the man was perceived as intelligent than when the eyes were closer. If the eyes were closer, the man was perceived dumber. And this has no basis, but it was a perception. And based on this, they created this whole implicit association test for you to figure out what are the areas in which you are making these associations and you're building your bias. It's very interesting. If you haven't done it, please do it. We don't have the time to run it here today. And this is also where the stories come in handy. The global head of HR at Johnson & Johnson, she used to mention that we encourage our leaders to share their personal stories about unconscious bias in their teams, thus creating an environment where people don't look at these biases or flaws and they feel safe to discuss them. And which is where storytelling really comes in handy. I talked about this lady CEO who had emailed. When you say it, you build a connect and you realize that it's an example where you can relate. The other places is sometimes we also assume some jobs like manufacturing and sales have normally seen fewer women. And we assume that, oh, that must be because they can't do it. And Unilever as an organization created a workforce of women from rural areas to show that this bias against women in sales is misplaced. They have 70,000 women in rural India as part of Unilever's extended sales force, selling home to consumers and in around the village. These women not only now earn income to support their families, but also have enhanced self-worth and self-esteem. So, okay, we are aware, we've done this assessment. How do we move to action? How do we move from knowing to doing? And that is the biggest gap that we have in unconscious bias. And I want to share 3 quick examples about 3 women who did that transition on moving from knowing to doing. Lorry driver. Traditionally, this is not a place where you see females in the industry, right? You don't see many women lorry drivers. So Yogita grew up in Nandurpur in Maharashtra, and she had 4 siblings, and she had earned a law degree as well. She was very happy being a wife and a mother when her husband encouraged her to study law. When her husband died about 16-18 years ago, she decided to rough it out on the road than practice law. And she said, if I'd opted to be a junior to some lawyer, I would have got pittance. I have 2 kids to take care of, but driving truck meant instant wages and greater stability. And so she said, I decided to take matters in my own hands and change my course of my life so that, and she said, great things happen when you move. And this she tied up with Shell India. They did a campaign called Great Things Happen When You Move. And she said, it was a new thing for me. It was not something that I had done before, but I kept asking for people for directions. When I did my first trip from Bhopal to Ahmedabad, I stopped on the way. I trusted my instincts. I stopped and asked people for directions, and it was all okay. She said, I made up my mind that I'm going to move forward in my life, and I'm going to do this for myself and my family. And I will keep moving forward, breaking all the barriers. And everything is possible when you start, and you can fulfill your aspirations if you believe in it. So when you hear an example like this, what does that make you think? And I want all of you to think that in your mind about the 3 people that I'm going to talk about. And what does that help you think about? And Yogita, the other thing that she did, which worked for her, is she never paid attention to people's comments. She said that nobody believes I drive trucks. They assume that I'm the driver's woman. Mechanics on the way, men at dhaba, everybody, they leer at me when they see me at the wheel. But when they see that I am driving, then their look changes dramatically. So I don't let any of this bother me. I move on. So please think in your mind as you hear this, what is the kind of inspiration that comes to you? And I will share about another example. Some of you may have heard of this app. It's called Animal. It was started by 2 girls, Neetu and Kirti, and they had met each other at IIT Delhi, and they wanted to be entrepreneurs. They were roommates at IIT Delhi, and they wanted to be entrepreneurs. But the whole world and their own parents were against them. In fact, Kirti talks about it in a video. She says her parents just looked at her and said, गाय भैंस ही बेचना था तो IIT जाने की क्या जरूरत था. And they said, but this is what we wanted to do. We really believe that we wanted to create a market where you can trade animals in a way that was very professional, building in AI, building in blockchain, building in all these, and create a marketplace which is very fair and transparent. We come from an agricultural family. We had people, cows and buffaloes in our house. We grew up around them. So this is what we want to do. So they faced a lot of challenges. And today they have a huge funding for their project from Segua, and they have a huge team working with them. They do road shows, convincing people. They do all these street dramas, convincing people to get onto their app and try it and create a very transparent process. So that's the story of Neetu and Kirti. Again, somebody who went to IIT Delhi, who could have been anything that they wanted to in terms of engineers, but they followed their passion. So again, I want you to think about, what does this make you think and how is this inspiring you in your journey? And the third example that I want to share is about an app developer. Her name is Mehwish Mustaq. And one of the realities today in Kashmir is that thousands of Kashmiri youth go to other parts of the country to make a living. They find better career opportunities there, especially if they are in the IT field. They don't stay in Kashmir. And she wanted to make a difference. And who is she? Just an ordinary girl who didn't study in a fancy college or an elite institution. She studied at a school called Presentation Convent. She sat for her All India Engineering Entrance exam, but she couldn't clear it. So she just went to a local college. It was called SSM College of Engineering and Technology in Patan, in Baramulla district in North Kashmir. And she was always interested in technology. Her parents were encouraging, but she was like, floating around trying to figure out. She finished a 3-year bachelor's course, and then her life took an unexpected turn. One day when she was on Facebook, she came across this ad, and it was an ad for an online course for developing apps. So she said, okay, let me sign up. The course itself was not too long. It was a 1-month course, but they had a project to develop an application as part of the course. So the idea of Dial Kashmir came up to her. She said that Kashmir at that time had no yellow pages or dedicated websites with reliable information, unlike the rest of India. So it was very difficult to track down different departments. So she created an Android app called Dial Kashmir, and she said this is what is the need of the hour. So again, listening to her story, not from an elite college, not from somebody, casually went in for an online course and created that into a mission, into a project. So how do we look at action very differently? We all need to take concrete action. We need mentors, we need sponsors, and we need to know more stories. Stories about the people that we study with, work with. All of this inspire us to and challenge us to be better. And as they say, it is not, the concept of gender is sometimes used to prescribe how we should be rather than recognizing what we actually are. And these gender stereotypes are harmful to men and women. Women can be military officers, firefighters, wrestlers, scientists, and so can men be artists, chefs, nurses, and dancers. So let's break free of the traditional notions of gender and think about our own individuality. And how do we do it? I want to leave you with a simple tool. It is using the word bias itself, so it's easy for you to remember. Whenever you confront with bias, be respectful. Because somebody might have an opinion because of a certain reason. Let's not get confrontational straight away. Be respectful, inquire by asking questions. Try to understand their point of view, assimilate to understand, and then look at specific action and accountability. So when people feel respected, practice this technique, bias technique, to create an environment that is bias free, where people can feel respected, and it helps businesses innovate, collaborate, and move forward. Be it at your workplace, be it at a meeting. Don't be a bystander, become an upstander. Be somebody who's going to take and make the change. And this starts really early, even at a college level. When you look at college recruitments, when you look at mentoring programs, when you look at task forces, ensure that you have the diversity and or create, instead of micro aggressions, look at what are the micro affirmations that you can create, which will make a big difference to everybody around you. Small gestures which will have big impact. At the end of the day, we can all be a help or harm to people, so we can be carrying on how we call it out even when we see a bias. And for all the men, this is an invitation to be the ally, be that person, so that it is not just one moment, one day, it becomes a movement for everybody to go along. Keep an open mind, keep learning, keep growing, and we will all move forward. It is almost like, to use a sports analogy, every step that we take towards gender diversity is like a baton relay race. The person who gets to cross the finishing line cannot have done it without the seconds gained by the people who ran before her. So let's be those people who are constantly running, helping others to go far ahead, and we will go far ahead with them as well. And extraordinary people don't become extraordinary because they are not vulnerable to unconscious bias. Everybody is. They are extraordinary because they choose to do something about it. And Aarti talked about the Women's Day pledge at the beginning. And that is a pledge, which is, I want all of us to look at taking today together as a group. Individually, we are all responsible. We are all responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day, every day. We can break the bias in our communities. We can break the bias in our workplace. We can break the bias in the schools, colleges, and universities. And with this, I would be happy if we can all actually get our videos on and say, break the bias, and maybe we can take a group photo together. That'll be really great. A nice way to commemorate this day with all of you. As many people as possible who can get the videos on.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, can you just stop share the
Yeah.
screen so that we can take a group picture?
Yeah, yes. I'll do that.
I request, if possible, kindly switch on your videos. Yes.
And I think most of you would have seen this, this is the break the bias thing. Maybe
and
we can all do it together.
Yes. So
yeah,
on
and
count of
so maybe
three,
Vaishali, you can give us a count of 1, 2, 3.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. We will count on count of three. We will do this.
And it's lovely to see so many nice faces today.
Okay, ready? So on count of 1, 2, and 3.
And can we also all shout break the bias together?
Yes, all can unmute themselves.
Okay, you have to give us a count again, Vaishali. We work only for when we have the clap.
Okay, on count of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Break the
Break the bias.
Break the bias.
Bye.
Take the bunch.
Big the bye.
Nice.
Nice.
Thank you
Thank
all
you,
so
ma'am.
much. That's all I have to share. I do have my contact details. Let me put that up in a minute. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I know it is a short and sweet session, and there's so many layers that we can go into when we talk about all this. But I hope it gave you something as a food for thought, something to get you started if you weren't already thinking about it. And I hope to stay in touch and keep in touch with you. Thank you so much, Professor Mary, Professor Aarti, and Vaishali and entire team, everybody who put this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would say such an insightful, and our students will be really inspired by your the storytelling thing which you have done. Really, thank you so much for the session. If students have any questions, ma'am, is it okay to take a question?
Sure, I'm here.
Okay. Students, if you have a questions, you can either unmute yourself or you can put in the chat box. I must say, ma'am, even I'm getting in personal as well, and in the chat, everyone is.
Me too. I'm also getting direct messages for
Really
the
wonderful,
appreciation.
wonderful session, ma'am. Ma'am, there is one question. How did you first get into this particular break the bias mindset? Ma'am, you are mute. Ma'am, you are mute.
Yeah. Thanks. Um, it's something that you just grow into. I was very lucky with my parents. So we are two sisters, and my dad used to go around telling anybody who cared to listen, I'm the proud father of two daughters. That was his line always. So I think we had a very nourishing environment, and even though my parents wanted to study a lot, because of their circumstances they couldn't, and they were very keen that their daughters study. So for us, studying was everything. As long as you studied, you could get away with anything. So as a result, when we were young, we would sit and study both books and comics and all that. We would keep the comics inside a book, and we would study, we would hide and study and all that. But that also gave us a leeway for not doing any work at home. My parents said, oh, she's studying, it's okay, don't disturb her, we'll manage. So my dad and mom and my grandmom was with us. So we were very pampered in that sense. Education was all important. And one time I remember in school when we had this NCC, National Cadet Corps program. But in our school at that time, and I'm talking about, the 80s, so really ancient, I'm telling my age now, there was no NCC for girls. I remember asking, I was quite interested about the program. I remember asking our NCC teacher, and he said, no, girls can't join. And that was because there were not any women teachers who could go along with the girls on camps at that time. And I'm sure things have changed now from what it was. I did accept it at that time. I didn't try fighting against it because it seemed like something that was not happening anywhere in any vicinity of my school or other schools that I knew. So sometimes I think these thoughts come in slowly over a period of time. It's not something that, I had an epiphany, I had that moment. For some people, it happens like that. But it's still a process. It is not something that you can start doing automatically or just after one incident. So it's something that builds on slowly. And I think it irritates us to a point when we then say, okay, fine, I'm going to take a call. And I think working with organizations like Aspire for Her is all modes where we are putting ourselves forward. We are helping the mentees who come into the program to face these questions and face these queries, sharing how we navigated the situation and giving them room to find their own path. Because my path in the 80s and the 90s cannot be your path today as students. You will find your own path. But I think having some of these interactions does make it useful.
Any other question?
Janvi
Yes,
will be saying something. Janvi,
Okay.
are you here?
Yes. Ma'am,
Yeah.
I don't think WDC could have celebrated Women's Day better than this. We are so grateful for you and the information you've just given us. I am really sure that it has left an impact on every participant's mind. It makes us believe that when a strong woman like you and also our teachers like Aarti ma'am, Vaishali ma'am, Mary ma'am, when strong women like you come forward, you not only elevate and support yourself, but you even elevate the confidence and support of other women. Like it really makes us believe that being a woman is a superpower in itself. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, Aarti ma'am. Thank you so much, Mary ma'am, Vaishali ma'am, Soundari ma'am. Thank you so much for this session.
No, absolute pressure. Thanks, Janvi, for saying that. I think it's Michelle Obama's book, which was about the moment of lift. So every woman creates a moment of lift for the other. So we're all just supporting each other. And that's true for men and women. I mean, while I know it is Women's Day and it's politically right to only talk about the women, I think men also suffer from their own biases and their own issues. I think we are all here to support each other as humans and take each other forward. So it's for all the men and women.
Okay, thank you so much. Every good thing comes to an end, and I'm feeling this session should not end, but now it's a time to we should end that session. So I'll request Vaishali Oja, chairperson of WDC, to propose formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Aarti ma'am. Respected colleagues, our most valued invited guest, Ms. Soundari Mukherjee, participants and dear students, it is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. On behalf of the entire KES of College fraternity, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our esteemed speaker for gracing today's event and sharing with us her wisdom of knowledge. This session was truly a learning experience for all of us. All the stories, polls, interactions were very apt to the theme and reached straight to our heart and mind. Your version for the word bias, that is be respectful. I for inquire by asking question. A for assimilate to understand. S for specific action and accountability is the best meaning to this word called bias. I hope our participants will also build up another perception to look towards how they can break the bias. We are all inspired by your great words, ma'am. I thank our management and our principal, ma'am, for always being very proactive and supportive. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to record the hard work put in by our all faculty members, student members of WDEC to make this webinar a success. We have been very fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues and students. Thank you to all of you for being with us today. It's a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It made my day to interact with everyone and be definitely bring the average age up, but I feel younger by this interaction. So thank you so much. And all the very best to you all as you go on in your careers and life. Thanks.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
Please don't leave the meeting as we are putting the feedback form. I think it is there only.
It's in the chat box. Kindly fill the feedback form.
I request kindly don't leave the Zoom meeting before filling the feedback form.
Recording.